doll that was like, you know, they were about 4 or 5 feet tall. It was as tall as me. And of course, he had gotten the barmaid to send it, and it wasn't really wrapped up that well. And it had a china face, and so one side of it was all smashed in. So, but I loved it so much, and it meant so much to me that I kept it in my room right next to my bed. Of course, every time I'd wake up, it was quite alarming. Ah! Then I think, okay, it's just a dog, it's all right. There's nothing horrible happening. Something else I wanted to mention is that, you know, friends can be forever or not, but brothers and sisters are forever for sure, right? And I just wanted to say that somebody said that family is not an important thing, it's everything. And even Guy Lafleur said, when troubles come, it's your family that supports you. And you know, I don't think I kind of knew that. But my sister Carol is sitting there, and my brother Greg, and I'm so proud of them because that's exactly what happened. Like Carol made the trip across the country twice to help out my brother Frank, and Greg stepped up when my brother Mike, who you'll see Mike in pictures with Kevin, they were like Irish twins. They were just 13 months apart, I think, and they loved each other fiercely, but you'd never know because they were constantly punching each other out and stuff like that. But they did, they loved each other very much. I'm so proud of, and I kind of learned from Carol and from Greg that is what family is, that they're always there, and it is the most important thing. And I'm going to pass it over now to Kevin's youngest boy, Anthony, who is going to share some things with us. And we've got a slideshow too, and some things that Anthony will explain to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's a hard act to follow. I'm going to be like Ricky Gervais and have my drink up. So thank you all for coming today. On behalf of myself, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Kevin's son, Anthony. On behalf of myself, my brother Kevin, and my mom, Diane, we're very happy to get here to celebrate our father's life. Kevin Edward Walsh was born September 4th, 1939 in St. John's, Newfoundland. Dad always said that he, as Mary had pointed out, that he wasn't born in Canada. He was actually born in Newfoundland before they had joined Confederation in 49. Growing up in the 40s and 50s in Newfoundland might as well have been the 1840s and 50s. Times were very tough. They were very poor. Dad was the firstborn to Mary and Leo Walsh. Leo worked as a stationary engineer and was a veteran of the First and Second World Wars as a merchant sailor. Mary was a full-time homemaker. At a young age, Dad was sent to live with his grandmother in Conception Harbor. Dad told us a story that his grandmother once chased him with an axe because he dropped an egg as he was removing it from chicken. Dad was an altar boy, and believe it or not, had his sights set on priesthood. I know. School was hard to say the least. School was hard to say the least because his teachers were the Irish Christian Brothers, who were famous for their cruelty. As a result, Dad quit school in the 8th grade, got a job at the Avalon Telephone Company as a lineman. At the age of 17, our father decided to join the Army. He thought that with his experience at the telephone company that he would join the Royal Canadian Signals Corps. But the Sigs had different ideas. Dad had a police record. As a young man, he got in a fight with an American service member downtown in St. John's. Even though Dad was a minor, he was charged with assault, and the Sigs wanted nothing to do with him. So, like many men before him, many men after him, he joined the infantry. So in 1957, Dad joined Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry and boarded a train bound for Edmonton, Alberta, the farthest away from home he had ever been. Dad fell into Army life quickly and was impressed that he received free clothing and 2 pairs of boots, something he was not used to growing up. The hard physical training came easy to Dad, working on the farm that his uncle as a boy had prepared him for infantry life. Dad excelled in sports and soon joined the boxing team. He understood the fundamentals of throwing a punch. I remember he used to teach Kevin and I how to throw a punch when we were kids. We weren't very good at it, although we did try very hard at one another. He always said that if he laid his glove on you, you're going to go down. And something he proved time and time again in his boxing career. Dad then volunteered for parachute training. He had never been in an aircraft before and was now going to throw himself out of one along with a rifle, rucksack, and snowshoes. He was sent to Rivers, Manitoba to take part in the basic parachutist course. Back in the day, they practiced landings from a 200-foot high tower. Dad had trouble with his landings and was sent up over and over again. Finally, the instructor said, if you can land that badly out of the tower without hurting yourself, you can jump it. So Dad passed the course and was awarded the coveted parachute wings. I remember him telling me he stood in front of the mirror forever after he had the wings sewn on his uniform tunic. After the course, he went back to Edmonton. What I'm telling you is all based on my father's stories, which I loved as a kid. He woke up after passing his parachute course, still in civilian clothing, while the rest of his company was on parade. He was unshaven and not ready to go on parade. Dad, in classic dad fashion, marched himself over to the company office and wanted to see the sergeant major. Sergeant major was less than impressed to see him not on parade in his civilian clothing and unshaven. And Dad said that he wanted a pass to go downtown. After several words, beginning with the letter F, Sergeant Major was wondering why he was in his office. Dad said, well, I passed my jump course. I want to go downtown. I want to pass. I don't know if the Sergeant Major could believe the audacity that Dad had to actually march himself into the office like that. But he got the clerk to give him a pass, and Dad went downtown and carried on. Just like he did the night before. After 3 years in Edmonton, Dad was looking for an adventure. Germany was an option, but his unit was not slated to go for some time. They'd recently returned from there. So along with John Tully, Jim Lloyd, and a few others, he decided to release from the Army. They were sent to a release center in Calgary. But their plan all along was to rejoin back up with the Queensland Rifles, who were deploying to Germany soon. Dad almost didn't get back in because of his record in 2BCOI. He had a bit of a charge sheet. Nothing serious. AWOL, drunkenness. Disorderly. Nothing major. He ended up getting back in. So in 1960, Dad joined the 1st Battalion of the Queensland Rifles of Canada and spent about 6 months training in Calgary before deploying to Fort Macleod in the British sector of occupied West Germany. We don't know a lot about Dad's time in Germany. We don't think Dad knows a lot about his time in Germany. I think it was all a big blur. He spoke fondly of his time over there. While he was on leave, he would split his time between Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and Ostend, Belgium. He also visited Yorkshire, England, the hometown of his friend John Tully. Dad continued with his boxing and made the Canadian Army Championships. When 3 years were up, the battalion moved back to Canada and took up residence at Workman Barracks' home. Now most Newfoundlanders, and there's quite a few of you here today, always talk about home. They always want to go back home. Not our father. Once he stepped foot here in Victoria, he never wanted to leave here. In 1964, Dad met our lovely mother. The rest is history. Dad's Army friend Bob Butchell was married to Mom's cousin Phyllis. The three of them went to see Dad in a fight. Dad always said that once Mom saw him in the ring, his boxing gear on, that was it. His Army buddies joke that they would give him about 6 months. Rumor has it that they had a bet going. But this November, it would have been 58 years. I don't know how you did it. It was around that time that Dad fought Mike Caird, a local Victoria boxer and Golden Gloves champion. Mr. Caird was preparing for the Tokyo Olympics and needed an easy fight to stay in shape. They looked to the Army for a challenger, and of course Dad volunteered. The fight was over in less than 2 minutes as Dad knocked out Mike Caird. As a result, Mike Caird could not attend the Olympics, and pretty much the end of his career. Dad pretty much ruined his career. Now it was time for an overseas deployment. In 1965, the 1st Green Zone Rifles deployed to Cyprus for a 6-month tour of peacekeeping duties. Dad did most of his touring in the Kyrenia Mountains in northern Cyprus. On return to Canada, Mom and Dad married. Kevin would show up on the scene in 1966, and myself in 1969. It was around this time that Dad became involved in mountaineering. He was one of the first mountain warfare instructors in the Canadian Army and helped set up a training school in Kananaskis Country, Alberta. He instructed cadets at the White Horse Banff and Banff cadet camps. He actually took me and Kev rappelling one time and just dropped the rope over about a 50-foot cliff and said, "Go ahead." I was about this big. I think I ran away in tears. I think Kev might have went over.
No.
And then he set the rope up at a smaller, about a 10-foot size cliff. Just went all day. In the late 60s or 70s, not sure exactly when, Dad was involved in a mountain rescue. A man was injured alone at the top of Mountain Peak. Dad and other instructors put together a rescue team. Dad was the lowest ranked, but the most experienced climber, so he was chosen to lead the climb. One of the officers wanted everyone to tie in together, to rope in together for safety, but Dad refused, saying that if one man falls, we're all dead. Everyone will have to make it to the top. And they did, and the man was given first aid and carried safely off the mountain. It's long since lost, but I read the after-action report years ago. It was incredible what these men did, along with our father, risking their lives to save this man, climbing at night and in the rain. Nothing short of a selfless act of heroism. In 1978, Dad retired from the Canadian Forces. After a short stint in the Commissioners Department, he joined the Coast Guard. In his interview, he told them that he had spent 22 years in the Canadian Forces. They assumed he meant the Navy. They hired him. Dad initially served on the Canadian Coast Guard ship Vancouver. Along with their sister ship, the Quadra, they patrolled an area known as Station Papa to collect weather data. At first, Dad was employed as a steward, but quickly became a deckhand. It would seem that life at sea ran in the family as Dad soon gained his sea legs. His knowledge of knocks and lashings from his time as mountaineering instructor paid off as he passed experience on to his fellow crewmen. The weather ships were decommissioned as technology made them obsolete, so Dad was then posted to a search and rescue cutter. The ship was called the George E. Darby. They patrolled around Vancouver Island and the Queen Charlotte's, often in heavy seas. Dad was involved in several rescues and at times had to recover bodies from the ocean. After retiring from the Coast Guard, Dad moved on to his next phase of life, the Royal Canadian Legion, one of his passions. He had been a member for years, but now became involved as an executive member. He eventually became the Sergeant at Arms for his branch and excelled in that position. His attention to detail, dressing deportment, and overall positive attitude was infectious. Dad loved the Legion and taking part in all activities, from celebrations of life like this to all ceremonial duties. And most of all, just being at the branch and interacting with other members, telling stories and having a laugh. People like Jack. We are Jack. He loved hanging out with you. We will all miss Dad in our own way. For me, I will miss his sarcastic sense of humor, his confidence and strength, and his ability to remain calm in the most difficult situations. Love you, Dad. May you always rest in peace. Most of all, what I miss about you is your stories. Fair winds and soft landings.